Hey guys, my name is Dr. Kyle Daigle with Neurosolution Center of Dubai, and today we're going to be talking about a revolutionary device called the GyroStim. And fortunately, we have Kevin Mayer who's actually here from the United States, and Kevin actually invented the GyroStim. And so Kevin, just tell us a little bit about what GyroStim is.
Okay. GyroStim is, as you said, I invented it. It's a multi-axis rotational chair. So it's computer controlled, and this allows us to put a person in this chair, and the chair can rotate forwards and backwards in a somersault fashion, and it can also rotate what we call yaw, so clockwise and counterclockwise. And with the computer controlling this device, we can now provide really precise dosages of stimulation, of vestibular stimulation for a person that might have some form of vestibular dysfunction. So in 2022, we were granted marketing clearance by the FDA for marketing as a medical device. But even more importantly than that, the FDA saw such value in this device. They also designated the GyroStim as a breakthrough medical device for treatment of vestibular dysfunction and balance disorders.
So what prompted you to develop the GyroStim?
Yeah, great question. And that's a long story. We have to go back a couple of decades to start that story, but I'm going to touch real quickly on it. So my daughter, I have two daughters. One of them was born 3 months too soon, so premature. As a result, she did suffer a significant brain injury, and which then resulted in cerebral palsy. And it's a really nasty form of cerebral palsy called periventricular leukomalacia, so PVL. And it's a form of brain injury that really is so severe that when research scientists are doing studies on cerebral palsy, if the injury occurred from periventricular leukomalacia, these children are excluded because there's been nothing really known to help them. So, they don't want to pollute their studies with children that they know that they can't help. So PVL kids are kept out of studies from cerebral palsy. That's from back in the 80s and 90s, and I don't know, maybe in 2004 they've changed that. But anyway, I was just bringing giving you that information, just letting you know that the injury that my daughter suffered was very severe, so when kids are born with cerebral palsy, especially a very severe injury, they really the brain and body connection is damaged, and so all of the typical wiring up that would occur with a normal, what we call plug and play kids that are born and they're able to get out and roll around and then creep and then crawl and then toddle on cruise on the furniture and then start walking. All of that is generating this really valuable sensory integration that helps them with their developmental stages that we all go through as a human being. When you have CP, what do? You lay there. And that's what my daughter did. She unfortunately just had no ability to get up and creep and crawl. So a lot of this early and very important and very valuable vestibular stimulation and sensory integration that should have been occurring with my daughter neurologically, it just didn't happen. So we tried a lot of different types of therapies. We ended up going with a group of therapists that really were structured to follow sensory integration therapies. So not just physical therapies. We did try that, but that didn't really work for Mackenzie. So we found that doing the sensory integration therapies, tactile, rolling around on the floor and doing some things that we were able to help Mackenzie. We were seeing some very subtle, but some gains. She was improving a little bit. She still had no trunk control. She still wasn't verbal. had a lot of just emotional fragility, a lot of crying, just at age 2 and age 3, it was just pretty poor. So then we got some advice from our clinicians that she might benefit from this stuff called vestibular stimulation. And so that was the first time I heard that word, vestibular stimulation. Looked it up, did a little research on it, and it made sense that, okay, this is something that, Mackenzie definitely missed out on in her early years. And here she is now 3.5 years old, and she still could not even sit up in a chair. She had, very low tone, very poor balance. So it was clear that, if anything was going to help, that this might be, essential for continuing her development. So they suggested that we put her in a office chair and spin her around clockwise and counterclockwise, and that was easy to do. So that gave her some horizontal, some yaw stimulation. But they also said that, that because of the semicircular canals that live in each of our ears, are part of the the vestibular system, we have to stimulate all 3 different canals, and so we needed to also do what's called pitch stimulation and also roll stimulation. And so when you have a person who, now she's becoming more spastic, and her arms would come out, whenever we would stimulate her, whenever we would try to stimulate her vestibular system. So it was very difficult to give her the pitch and the roll stimulation. And so I came up with this idea, had this wonderful vision of a way to put my daughter in a safe, controlled environment and then rotate that environment. So this way we could control the amount of motion that we were giving her and also protect her from getting hurt. So at age 3.5, I came up with the very first, prototype of what is now this beautiful thing called GyroStim. But back then, so, the only reason that I would be motivated to have, continue the development of this is because of what we saw in the very early, first few weeks of rolling Mackenzie around in this machine that I made. We saw her trunk control come in. We saw her balance improve. And these subtle things just started from birth. If you were to put this on a chart and you were to, plot it out, her development from birth was very, very, very slow. And then all of a sudden we gave her this rather intensive vestibular stimulation in all 3 axes, pitch, roll, and yaw. And it was, if you were to chart it, it was looking like, okay, we found a missing piece to this puzzle, And so our therapists and doctors, they were really excited. We would take Mackenzie in for assessments every 6 months. It would assess her, and they were really blown away by the development that was happening in such a short period of time. And they encouraged me to continue development of my little torture devices, right? These vestibular devices I made for my daughter. So I started thinking about it, and I was like, I get it. There's a lot of hurt kids out there, and that's where my mind is. I'm thinking about the other parents that are suffering the same kind of suffering that I went through with my wife and I, what we went through with our daughter. So, I'm an engineer in the semiconductor industry. I work with a lot of robots, a lot of electronics, and so I have all this knowledge about how to, automate, make things move. And I'm like, this isn't so difficult. I can automate this, and I can provide controls for this rotation. And so I made a commitment that, okay, I'm going to automate this thing. And sure enough, that's what I did. From you've heard people create things in their basement. Well, I'm that guy. So just went to work, got a really good team of automation experts, software writers, together with my vision for what needs to occur, what this device needs to do. What does it have to do? What kind of controls do we need? And so in 2006, I completed the first automated multi-axis rotational chair. I completed the development of it, and so that was where things really got interesting. I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Just so happens there's this little place called the United States Air Force Academy that's also there in Colorado Springs. And just through the connection of a couple of dots, I had a couple of colonels come to my house, come down to my basement and see this computer-controlled, automated, multi-axis rotational chair that has, these phenomenal controls. And they said, it's a little crude, but and I said, no, this is just the first. This is a prototype. But we've got, here's the plans for where this is going. And they bought into it. They said, yeah, this looks good. We would like to have this. So turns out Air Force Academy was our first customer. They put it to work right away in aerospace medical research. And then the next year, Mayo Clinic out in Scottsdale, Arizona, they have a vestibular research lab out there that's all about aerospace medical as well. And those flight surgeons, they became very interested in it, and they bought the next one in 2009. And then in 2010, Life University, through negotiations, I decided to place one of our units there so they could do do actual clinical studies with this device for clinical applications. And so that's when things got very interesting.
They have these children out there, they have cerebral palsy, maybe developmental delay, and, they're going to see all these great therapists, and their children are plateauing, they're really not getting better. And one of the questions here is, again, I understand this, but I want, from you to explain this, is that how can vestibular rehab and the GyroStim kind of help accelerate some of these kids that really are hitting plateaus?
Right, yeah. Well, the vestibular input is so important for just childhood development, and for reasons that better than I do. That particular vestibular sensory input may be dysfunctional. Kids with autism, especially kids with cerebral palsy, a wide range of different developmental delays benefit. It's in the literature. It's already there. It already exists that giving these kids vestibular stimulation can be beneficial, can help them move along, and it's current in practices right now. Pretty much every clinic that you go to that is working with kids that are somewhere on the spectrum, ASD, some kind of developmental disability, they're, along with many other modalities, probably, they're going to get vestibular stimulation. And it's really interesting because there are so many cases out there of kids with autism that will spontaneously speak after a really good dose of vestibular stimulation. So imagine if you have migraine headache and you take 200 milligrams of aspirin. It's probably not going to do a whole lot. It might go a little bit towards that migraine headache, but not a whole lot. But you get just the right powerful dosage of medicine, and you can really help the migraine headache, right? Same thing with a child with developmental disabilities. They're getting a little bit of vestibular stimulation on a platform swing, or rolling around on a ball, or jumping into a little room of balls, or doing something just to stimulate their system. And that's that little dose. So now we give this kid that really needs a big dose. We give them this GyroStim device, which is now challenging the entire sensory motor system, of course, including the vestibular, but it's challenging, ocular, what the kid is seeing, what they're feeling, the proprioception, the somatosensory, all these different sensory systems that feed the brain are being challenged at the same time. And with this device, the GyroStim, with the controls that we have, we can give the kid a very specific dosage of stimulation. We control it. We are actually allowed to use the term dosage of stimulation. So we're really proud about that. Because now a doctor such as yourself can take this device and you can create sessions of dosages of stimulation that build one session upon another, and we can it's all data driven. So when a kid is in there, we're getting feedback from the kid, and we're getting data that helps guide us on giving the proper dosage, run after run after run. So we're giving maximum therapy, and we're protecting from overstimulation because we're getting this data feedback from each run. So these kids with developmental disabilities, and that may already be getting vestibular stimulation and having some benefits. Yeah, you if this kid is really needing some serious vestibular stimulation, there is no other device on planet Earth that can provide the control and the intensity of stimulation that we can.
So you shared a story with me last night, which was super incredible. But I'd like for the world to know about the status of where your daughter is today.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. So Mackenzie, born with this severe brain injury, her prognosis was really bad. It wasn't looking good. And it really was a big challenge. So with lots of hard work and dedication on her part, and of course on my wife, who just gave up she had her own business. She was a headhunter, and corporate placement job placements, 6 figures, and she gave it all up, and just dedicated her life to helping, making sure that Mackenzie had every chance that she could possibly have having a normal life. So every single day, lots of therapy. And then along came GyroStim, and it really, it was a game changer. We started seeing a lot of improvements. Like I said, everything started to wire up. And so that missing piece of her puzzle, we got that in place. And then Mackenzie was able to excel intellectually. She is a brilliant young lady. She's now 27 years old, and she is in her final year of her dream of being a research scientist. And that's exactly what she is right now. So she is getting ready for her dissertation in cognitive neurosciences. So she is such an inspiration to me. And because of what I've seen and experienced with her, it is just all the fuel that I need to put in my tank to keep going after what it is I'm going after with GyroStim. I believe in it. I've seen it. Been doing this, like I said, since the first installation at the Air Force Academy back in 2008 to this most recent installation right here at your beautiful new, Neurosolution Center of Dubai, and every installation in between. I've met thousands of parents, thousands of kids, and I've seen these incredible, really miraculous changes that occur from one session to another. I've seen kids with autism coming in the clinic just constantly screaming, constant verbalization, just the chaos that this poor kid has. Screaming the whole time that we put them in the GyroStim. And I'm right there, I'm telling the parents, it's okay. Trust me, it's okay. Let's just see what happens. We get the kid in there and give that kid the stimulation that his brain needs. And it's like a switch. It's a switch that reduces this chaos that is going on in this kid's head. And you just see the lights come on in the eye. And almost every time we'll get the kid out And instead of the screaming kid, he's zero screaming. He'll walk over to his mommy, and if he is verbal, he'll say something like, "Mommy, I'm hungry. Can we go get something to eat?" But and the mom will just look up and goes, "He's never like that. Never happened." So, we're seeing these wonderful things happen. We're having these great outcomes, and so, that is the motivation. But yeah, it's all because of Mackenzie, and God only knows what she is now going to do with her experience. Her purpose here on Earth, right? I mean, look at what she's had to go through. She's a person with a disability. She is still in a wheelchair. She is walking with canes, but she does generally get around in her wheelchair. But cognitively, she's the best person I know here on planet Earth. She is just wonderful.
That's amazing, man. I have a beautiful princess. And, you're a superhero, man, in her eyes, man, to be able to take a child who had a disability, especially with a brain injury. A lot of times these kids, the prognosis, the future really is not that good. And to see her now, getting a PhD and, to see where she's at is incredible. So let me ask you, so from GyroStim perspective, how many GyroStims do you have throughout the world, and what about the Middle East?
Yeah. So we now have about 55 systems throughout the world. We have, it started off mostly in aerospace medical for research, but since then it has grown into, it's all really going strictly to clinics such as yours. We have them in Australia, Canada, Brazil, Germany, Netherlands, and I'm forgetting a couple right now. And now, for the first time here in the Middle East. So this is our first installation. I'm very grateful to you and your team for choosing this technology. So this is the first one. It's a big deal. I'm really happy about this.
Yeah. So whenever we were trying to build Neurosolution, the goal here was to build one of the most impressive, state-of-the-art, revolutionary, facilities here for neurological rehab, but specifically bringing advanced technology. And Dr. Crawford and I were working on building out this whole facility. So we were looking at really all of the top facilities, all the different modalities to use. And we decided, hey, look, we want to bring this vestibular device here. It's really neat. Our whole team spent the entire week doing the vestibular rehab, where we are actually in the GyroStim, we're spinning around, we're doing all these eye movements. And it was neat to see that even our own therapist, who even had, they were top of their game, still being able to get incredible results. Right. And in saying that, one of the things, I had a TBI really severe in 2013, and it completely wrecked everything in my entire life. And I actually developed POTS. So I was throwing up literally up to 13 times a day. I was passing out. My heart rate would go from 72 to 145. And, personally having vestibular dysfunctions, it was wild. It's debilitating. Yeah. And from a cognitive perspective, I also noticed that I couldn't really think clearly. Once I was able to get my vestibular system stable, it was like the lights turned back on and, everything went back to normal. And so in saying that, we have this incredible device. You heard Kevin actually mention that this is the first GyroStim in the Middle East. We have this in our Neurosolution Center of Dubai. We're looking forward to it. Typical kind of cases that we're going to be treating utilizing this are going to be kids with developmental delays, autism, dyslexia, cerebral palsy, genetic disorders, patients who've suffered concussions, spinal cord injuries, traumatic brain injuries, even Parkinson's. It's very interesting. Back in the States, in our facilities, we've seen that if we actually start using vestibular rehab, we've actually noticed that we can actually even reduce some of the tremors. And again, that's improving quality of life. So let's just some of the kind of, do you have any really cool stories of, some big cases that patients have actually went through in the States or throughout the world that you want to maybe highlight?
Sure. Absolutely. I've got a bunch of them. One of my favorite stories was I was given a training in Asheville, North Carolina, with a really fabulous doctor, Kim Fox, DPT. During the training process, we like to work with some of the actual patients. And she brought in a patient, 63-year-old male. He had just retired from the Air Force. He was a colonel. And so his life was, this proud, military guy, Air Force guy. And he just retired, and he was just just wanting to enjoy his retirement. One evening, he pulled over on the side of the interstate to help a lady who was, I guess she had a flat tire. And he, pulled over. The car that was following him just kept following him and ran into him. He hit the car in front of him. And so he had concussions both forward and backwards. And so he was, the incident had occurred 6 months prior to when I met him at this new GyroStim installation. This guy, he comes in walking with a cane. He has dark glasses on because he has the photophobia. It's a really bad post-concussion syndrome. And he had been through a bunch of different physical therapy things and was taking meds, but he's pretty stuck in his recovery. So his persistent post-concussion syndrome is where we were now. But his biggest problem was this. It was right after the incident, this concussion, this brain injury caused him to become a profound stutterer. And so this guy could not speak a sentence without stuttering for like 10 seconds on every word in the sentence. And so, we got him in the GyroStim. We did a bunch of really, brilliant maneuvers with him. And at the end of that first session, one session, said, "Hey, so what do you think? Do you like GyroStim? How do you feel?" And he's without thought, he just started talking. He said, I feel pretty good. I think this is going to work for me. And I said, "Hey, do you realize that you just spoke a sentence without stuttering one time?" And he just got all choked up, and he just said, "Oh my God, I'm not stuttering." Oh, and so I saw, what I'll say is it was just like a miracle. Of course, there's reasons for this, but it looks like it's like a miracle. 30 minutes in the GyroStim, profound stutterer, severe, persistent post-concussion syndrome. And this guy's stuttering went away. So to me, that's amazing. That was some serious power I'd never seen before. And I have so many other stories, like that, from concussion, a lot of patients with concussion, but also, with autism. So, but yeah.
Well, let's just talk about this. So sensory input into the brain has to process this, and then the brain has to react to it. And there's a lot of kids have an issue with sensory. So the brain just can't process things. And then the next thing is the brain also has a hard time with reacting. So when you see these kids with developmental delays, they just don't react very well. And in doing that, you taught with us about these 3 pillars that I'd like for you to kind of share about sensory input. But yeah, so just let's talk about how the brain basically senses, perceives, and how it reacts.
Right. Perceive, process, and react. So our brain the way it functions, its function is to perceive the world so it can process what it perceives and react to it. So we can not just survive in the world, but thrive in the world, right? And kids that have sensory processing disorder, their world is very scary and frustrating and chaotic, and it's like alphabet soup in their head. And so you chose the word that their brain can't react or can't process, I think is what you said. And it's the brain has not, the proper challenges have not been presented to this brain to incrementally challenge the brain to process better. So kids with sensory processing disorder, they need to be challenged. And of course, they get a lot of challenge and stimulation throughout their day, doing the different therapies and different modalities. And that's all wonderful. Vestibular has, really historically been a difficult thing to provide to these kids. They can get some stimulation on their own by running around and doing things, but a lot of these kids, you'll find them, they just love to swing. You get them on a swing set, and that's where they're the happiest. Or they'll be spinning. Now these are the kids that are really craving. They're self-stimulating, right? And so with GyroStim, we are able to stimulate that vestibular sensory processing, and we can do it incrementally, as I said earlier, in such a way and with such intensity and with such duration that is just not humanly possible, okay? But with this new automated device that you now have, you get to select whatever dosage and whatever duration of stimulation you feel is appropriate for this kid, hit the go button, and you get to see the results. You get to build this kid's vestibular processing in a way that is just simply not possible by any other means.
So one of the things with the Neurosolution is that we developed a method. So it's called energy sensory movement. And what we found is that a lot of our patients really don't get good blood flow to the brain. The other thing is that they actually have something called cranial nerve imbalances, which means that maybe one pupil is bigger, maybe one eye is a little deviated, maybe there's a head tilt. A lot of these kids didn't crawl whenever they're little. Maybe these kids didn't walk. Some of these kids didn't even roll. And it's very interesting because the GyroStim targets something called the vestibular system, and it deals with all these different type of multi-axis rotation. And if these children never properly crawled or then they didn't roll, that's a problem because the brain is lacking this sensory stimulation. And it's really neat because we can take a child, even an adult, and we can put them into this, and based off of deficits that they have, we can literally spin and we can actually put these children and adults in these different axes, different positions. And what that is sometimes that could exactly be the missing threshold that these kids have that just turns the brain on.
Right.
I mean, I've seen personally for myself, I'm an ex-college athlete and I get in this thing and then all of a sudden I get out and now my peripheral vision, I see so many different things. And, a lot of times that happens with patients with strokes. Maybe they can't see something on the left or the right side of their body. And then once you put them in, you do targeted vestibular rehab in the GyroStim, now this person's world, they can see more. An interesting thing is even their posture, their balance, their coordination can change. Just kind of, maybe you can kind of talk about I know autism is a very significant issue here in the Middle East. And let's just talk about, some of the clinical things that you've heard and what they've seen from, kids on the spectrum once they get into the GyroStim.
Right. Yeah. Great. And again, so it's already in the literature. It's already out there. All the studies all, agree that vestibular stimulation is a very powerful treatment modality for kids with autism. And so, like that analogy that I had used earlier about the small 200 milligrams of aspirin to help with a person with a severe migraine headache, it might help a little bit, but it's not what that person really needs. They need a much bigger dose. A lot of kids with autism, it's the same thing. They're going to get help from doing vestibular stimulation things at home, the exercises at home, spinning in an office chair, maybe spinning on a platform swing, but that's just a small dose. And so, with this new tool, this automation, these controls that we have, boy, we can now give these kids not just a dose of powerful, but we can incrementally challenge this system. So we don't just start high and just blast. We build. So, one dose then leads to, we can now give a higher dose, and then the brain, processes this. Now we can go to the next higher dose. And it's a method that we've developed, and it works for a very wide range of conditions. when I'm talking to people about GyroStim and I talk about brain health, I look at it like there's this big spectrum of brain health. From we will grow to the extent that we are challenged, and so if we can continue to challenge our brain to perceive and process and react, be it physically, emotionally, intellectually, our brain's going to grow. Neuroplasticity will allow that to happen. And so GyroStim is this thing that we can provide this stimulation and challenge the brain in ways that simply are not possible with physical therapy, just standard, just hands-on physical therapy in a rotary swing, or rotary platform or something. With the GyroStim, it's automated, it's powerful, it's a controlled dosage of stimulation, and we have 30 different levels of controlled dosages of stimulation that, again, in the hands of a doctor such as you, you will know exactly when to give level 10 and when to this person. Now we see the signs that we want to go to level 12 or level 14, but we can build, and we can take people that are profoundly brain injured, a person that's just an average person, and we can take superstar athletes and we can improve their performance as their performance relates to them.
Well, let's talk about that, because we treat a lot of, back in the States, we work with a lot of high-level business executives, this is an incredible device that we can actually improve, everything from cognition, reaction times, even stress levels. But what have you guys seen back in the States with the GyroStim and patients, with high-level executive?
Great question. So what we're doing back in the States, and a lot of doctors are now leaning in this direction. And as you have now seen with some of the training that we've done here at Neurosolutions, the GyroStim is, we're almost looking at it now as it is really just the fundamental platform for where we can now use this, and we can overlap complementary cognitive challenges at the same time that this person is receiving this vestibular stimulation in the GyroStim. So, and when we do this, we can get the brain functioning at threshold, and we can precisely get to threshold and then go just a little above threshold. What is threshold? I'm talking about what the brain's ability is to perceive and process and react. And so it goes beyond just vestibular processing, right? Let's talk about the executives that, so for them, for people that, their day depends, their livelihood depends on their ability to make split-second decisions, to take all of the knowledge in their head and be able to, make these decisions to grow their business. As we age, some of these functions, start to decline. With GyroStim, we can put a person in the GyroStim. We can give them cognitive challenges that actually challenge their ability to process cognitive thought, cognition, working memory, short-term memory, many, many different strategies. And I know in our training that we've just scratched the surface. I've scratched the surface with you on this. And I can only imagine the wheels that must be turning in your head on where you're going to take this technology for helping executives.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. So, one of my favorite things to work with is actually military guys. A lot of these guys have TBIs, balance, coordination, PTSD, but also some of these guys come and see us to just improve coordination, cognition, reaction time. So,
Sure.
What is the benefits that you guys have seen clinically with GyroStim with the military guys?
Yeah, right. And, there's no discrimination between an executive and a military guy. It's all about brain performance, right? Military guys, they're the same thing. They come in, they have the same kind of problems that everybody else does. And then some, right? We've seen a lot of guys that have had multiple IED explosions, and which cause TBIs of all different types. The worst type of PTSD is a blast-induced PTSD. These are very difficult injuries that used to be considered a psychological problem. Now we know that it's an actual physical problem in the brain. not unlike a concussion. They're TBIs is what they are. And we can treat them like a TBI with the GyroStim. The GyroStim can be used to help guys, military personnel who have been injured in combat from multiple blasts and, are experiencing symptoms that are very much like a TBI. So their treatment would be the same as any other person with a TBI. But what's really interesting is also how GyroStim can be used, as I've been saying, for performance enhancement. When you're a special ops guy and, microseconds count between life and death, kill, no kill, right? You bust into a room and you have to make a split second decision. We can use GyroStim to challenge that discernment, to challenge that decisiveness. There are many strategies, and we touched on some of them in our training. And I think that you have some pretty good ideas on where you can go with this to help some of the folks that you're working with right now. It's a very, very valuable tool that can be used in a setting that no one's going to get hurt, right? We can, and like for fighter pilots, sure, they can. It's so expensive for a fighter pilot to go up into fly sorties and to do some very challenging things that might even cause them to black out. And there's been, of course, lots of incidences with that. With the GyroStim, we can enhance the performance of the brain's ability to process, really extreme motion, situations. So for situational awareness, there are so many things that we can do in this device to improve that performance.
It's incredible. All right. So, one, thank you so much for coming to Dubai and actually training our team. It was awesome having Kevin from the United States here with his revolutionary device, GyroStim, incredible technology, and it was just, it was a great experience to be trained by Kevin himself and our team. So, we've decided to add the GyroStim to our intensive program. So what we have here in Dubai is we do 4 hours of stimulation a day, typically 20 hours a day of brain stimulation. So it's really about repetition. We teach over repetition is the mother of learning of the brain. And so a lot of big things is, as we tell people, Olympic athlete, these guys train for 6 to 8 hours a day. And when you really want to kind of increase brain performance, for us, it's not treating someone for an hour a day. It's actually sustainable, lots of repetition. So we decided to, add this incredible device in our treatment, and it's part of our intensive program. So for those of you guys out there that are interested in, adding GyroStim to your intensive program or even coming in to try it out, we look forward at Neurosolution Center of Dubai to have you as a patient and to show you guys the kind of results that we can get. And I just want to also highlight too that Neurosolution is really excited to actually have the very first GyroStim in the entire Middle East. All right, guys, this is Dr. Degel at Neurosolution Center of Dubai, and we ask you to stay tuned for future podcasts.